It seems like we hear a lot about what to kind of look for if there's a friend, and here are some things to look for, but it always seems like it's geared toward females. If I am suspectful that there's a male in my life who is on the receiving end of sexual assault or domestic violence, what am I looking for? What would that look like? What characteristics could that look like if it was a male?
I'll actually say this is actually from personal experience. This is somebody I dated, and I think it's the things that I was particularly sensitive to it because of what I do. And this was a person who was in his early 60s, who'd been married for quite a long time, was in the process of, he wasn't living with his wife, they were in the process of getting divorced, and she broke into his house, went through his computers, went through the names of women on his cell phone. I got this really bizarro phone call from her. She followed him. She like get in the car and follow him, and like followed him all the way to where he was going. Would be waiting for him when he came home. I think that the difference is that probably in most cases, because of the physical differential, women are probably less likely to actually be physically violent, although that's really happened. But the verbal abuse and those sort of stalking behaviors are not uncommon, and we get calls on our hotline. As one of my staff attorneys said the other day, when you get a call from a man, it's really, really bad.
But what are the behaviors that he is exhibiting? Is he withdrawn? Is he keeping to, what are the, what
No,
are
he
the
was very
things?
dismissive of it. So it was very that, well, that's not really domestic violence, that's not abuse, that she's the mother of my children, I'm not going to do anything about it. So, but it was, and I think over long term, I think part of what happens is that it makes it very difficult to move on and form another relationship because you're still stuck in this drama, and until you can sort of, like I said, the psychological component of something is something I don't know so much about, but I think if you're still continuing to be stuck in that abusive relationship, it's very hard for you to move on and heal. I mean, in order to be able to move on with your life and get past the abuse, you're going to have to be able to heal, and you have to let go and acknowledge that that's not a healthy relationship.
Any other feedback on that? What are the behaviors you see?
I think in some ways they're not any different than what you would see in any other, even, I mean, there's always the machismo dynamic, and there's all of those different things as well. But we see lots of gay male couples where abuse is an integral part of their relationships. And you see a lot of the same things that you do with women. You see them become withdrawn. You see maybe they don't have as much contact with friends and family anymore. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they don't tell you everything that's going on at home. And it's all those really subtle things that you notice about a friend that you have to be attentive to all the time. Behavior changes. They don't call you back. Or you're out having lunch with them and their cell phone's ringing over and over and over. Where are you? Are you going to be there? And so a lot of those types of things. And I guess maybe it depends if it's could be difference in, is it female on male or if it's male on male violence. But at the same time, the thing to always remember is that every situation of violence is completely different. The dynamics of it is completely different. What she's experienced, what my sister experienced, what other people have experienced are completely different in the way that they ramp up, in the way that the people respond. Some people say, screw it, I'm out of here. Other people stick around and they hang on, and it's because it's individuals. And so all the care, everything you need to do in the legal system, in the emotional system has to be really tailored to that individual.
One of the things that we're starting to see more is violence in same-sex relationships. And Texas is not a really good place for economic reasons to be in a same-sex relationship because you don't really have much recourse if you've been economically taken advantage of. And I don't know that, I assume that there are various organizations nationally that track the difference, based on gender and heterosexual versus homosexual. I don't happen to know.
And they're not very accurate because they're much lower reporting.
They're much lower reporting.
Men are much less likely to
I think
report.
we could probably, I'll stipulate that we could say that probably the violence in same-sex relationships and the violence where men are the victim as opposed to the perpetrator is probably reported substantially less than where they're women, and we know that the women is underreported. So just sort of put that in context.
And take this with you because it's got some good starting information, good statistics too about the topic.
Safe Place has a video, and it has a young man who had been raped, And he said, take the number that you hear and then triple it because men are not reporting it. It's not a manly thing to be in a shelter. And there's also the situation where Safe Place has an apartment that a family lived in because the man and the wife and the child had to live there to get away from an abusive family member. So those are situations where they're not necessarily directly being abused, but they're affected by the violence.
I think we can only try to comprehend how much more difficult it might even be for a man to report. Are there groups, is there some kind of community where these men can share with one another? Because I have to assume they'd be such an isolated group.
Definitely. Safe Place has male-specific support groups, both on sexual assault, childhood sexual abuse, and domestic violence issues. So, yeah, it's if there's a need, we're probably got a group for it.
And again, one thing that's important to recognize is that the law actually does not make a distinction between men or women or same-sex relationships in terms of the protection that's offered for a protective order or what's considered domestic violence.